It has been a friend for many 25 years, perhaps. Incredible man. I mean, from the beginning, I said, this guy is incredible. And by the way, I never bought a share of Apple. Shows an idiot. Complete idiot.
Did he ever say you ought to do this because I have ideas that'll make a difference? I have an instinct for design and technology.
I'm an imbecile. Imbecile. Complete imbecile. I knew he was a genius. I knew.
What separates him?
Well, I'll tell you a little story. I have a friend who's called David Kelly, who's a guy who started a company called IDEO. He's a professor at Stanford, okay? He got a phone call a few years ago, 2 o'clock in the morning. He said, hello, this is Steve. Are you sleeping? He said, yes. I said, but you can't sleep. This is very important. I said, what is it? This is very, very important. He said, in the back of the iPod, if you open it up, there's 3 screws. They really look ugly. Can we put only 2? I said, so David said, why? Nobody opened. No. Somebody might open the computer. They will see that 3 horrible. We have to change that. I mean, the obsession of Steve is beyond what's normal. But he's incredible. And another time I was in Palo Alto, and he said, Johnny, can you go and see my new shop? So I went to see the shop. I said, I called him up. I said, it's fantastic. See, was that a vanity thing? He said, you're wrong. I'm going to have 1,000 of those shops. And they're going to be the most beautiful, interesting shops in the world.
And these are the Apple stores?
Yes. Yeah. That was the first one. And the people who are working there will be people obsessed by Apple computers.
And the design for the one on 5th Avenue and 59th Street, the way it is out there, that building, and one of the great parkways of America was his idea.
Absolutely.
And not only did he care about the idea, he cared about the size of the...
Absolutely. He has a pattern on the glass stairs.
Right.
No. The man is... But the weird thing, then you go to his house, it looks like a Hansel and Gretel, a very normal, simple house, you know.
And he doesn't travel much, even before he had illness questions.
He travels a little bit, not that interested. You know, this year he didn't come. Last year he came to see me in the south of France with his wife, who's a wonderful girl, and his children. But he's not that interesting. I mean, he's not the obsessed traveler. You know, he travels, he comes. But
not by work at 2 o'clock in the evening.
Obsessed. But with an incredible level of taste and an incredible level, always wanted to progress.
Well, Steve he has multiple talents. He's a true perfectionist. He has an ability to focus on making great things and not making a lot of things. That's a great quality. He is a genius when it comes to design. He knows how to get the most out of people. He challenges people all the time to fulfill his great dreams and his great ideas. He has an acute awareness of what people want, what customers want. And then sometimes it manifests itself in very small ways, and sometimes it's large. I remember talking to him about the iPad and it becoming a reader, making sure that you could read books on it. And it was a simple thing when he said to me, you know, when you're reading a book, and often you want to know how many pages you have left, well, we're going to make sure that on the iPad reader, you know when you're on a certain page, or you can find out very quickly how many pages you have left. That's a small thing, but when you think about the many things like that, large and small, and the collection of those on the consumer experience, there's real genius there. Real genius. You know, the iTunes platform, which is a wonderful platform, it's not just about the music, it's not just about the hardware or the players, it's about that middleware, that software in the middle that enables you to easily find a song, buy a song, catalog it by putting in a playlist, moving your playlist around, moving the music from one device to the other. There's a brilliance to that.
Apple is the culture of the Sun King. And it's a culture.
That would give us the job.
There ain't no other. and he's a genius.
Yeah.
And by the way, he's a bit of a poet too. I mean, if you read some of the early interviews he did, like the Playboy interview he did 20 years ago, his use of language and his breadth of reading of novels and stuff is quite extraordinary, and his awareness of music. He's a very interesting cat. But he is a guy who is very controlling, and no one talks to the press. There's a certain amount of fear there that you don't see on the Google campus at all. And it doesn't mean that Larry and Sergey are not respected, but they're not feared that way. And it feels more like a college campus than I think.
And Apple feels more like what?
More like Microsoft.
The iPhone has the brilliance of Steve Jobs and his persistence behind it and his legacy behind it.
Well, and a lot of smart engineers and designers.
A lot of smart on all parts.
He's doing it himself. Yeah.
Yeah, but he's the driving force. I mean, the thing that I read about Steve, and you know him well, is that, I mean, he's like the product manager for this thing. I mean, he's not just some CEO sitting in a corner office waiting for a report.
He gets very, you're absolutely right. He gets very involved in the design of these things, but it's not like he's sitting there inventing it from the ground up, but he's very involved. He's a product guy. At our, again, at the interview I just did with him earlier in June, he said, he asked Kara Swisher, my partner, and I, who were interviewing him, to guess how many committees there are at Apple. And we said we didn't know, and he said 0. And I don't know if he was exaggerating, but he said 0. And he said the way that he runs the company, he has 1 3-hour meeting a week where they bring all the heads of the different functions in, the person that's in charge of Mac software, the person that's in charge of iPhone and iPad software, and the hardware counterparts, and the marketing people, and they go through every product they do for 3 hours. And of course he has, I'm sure, other meetings with other people at the company, but he claimed to run it, even though it's now a very wealthy company and big company, he claimed to run it as much as possible like a startup. And it was interesting to hear him say that.
I will say, however, that the truly creative person in that field is Steve Jobs. He keeps reinventing industry after industry by imagining things other people don't imagine. So I think Steve Jobs happens to be a little bit more imaginative than anybody else in the industry.
Well, all of these portable devices, both the processors, the processor chips, the computer brain that's in them, and the software, and the screens, and the cameras, and every aspect of them is improving at an accelerating pace, and the competition is fierce. Now, I give great credit to Steve Jobs, what he did with the iPhone, because he defined a platform that many companies are still trying to catch up and to emulate, and then of course the iPad after that. So he's really had three hit new platform definitions in a row, which is truly, truly amazing. It's tribute to his foresight to develop consumer products. Now, where these things go in the future, they're going to get better and better and better, and you'll have things like better speech understanding and gameplay and recommendations that come to you instantly as you move around in the world. It's very, very exciting, and I'm excited about that platform, and I've got a couple initiatives working on products for mobile.
What?
Well, I don't want to announce yet, so I'm not going to go into detail.
If you look at everybody in Silicon Valley, and you look at it just in terms of the 21st century, Steve Jobs clearly has to be number 1, doesn't he?
He is an amazing genius at defining these new design points for platforms. In the book, I talked a little bit about a discussion I had with him between having a 2-button mouse, which was my preference, and him very intently insisting that, no, Paul, you don't understand. It's all about simplicity and ease of use, and someone's reaction to the first few minutes that they use something.
Fortune magazine said Steve Jobs was the best CEO of the last 10 years. When you look at Apple and what he has done there, what are the 2 most important reasons they have been successful in the way that they have? Or 1 or 3?
I think it's a maniacal attention to who he thinks the market is. His market is. I think he defines his market very carefully in terms of the people that would like the products that he builds for himself. I asked him once, I described him the focus group process that we use at Intel for customer testing, and I said, what do you use for a focus group? And he started laughing. He said, us. If we don't like it, none of our customers are going to like it. And I think he
has a golden gut in part.
Not just him. I mean,
people around
the Apple team. Yeah.
Right.
And I think that's a good litmus test for where the company's been. The other thing he's done is he's not been afraid to challenge other people's industries. What he did with music is, I think, a classic example of that.
And that's the first time that somebody has successfully delivered that product with the fast AT&T 3G network.
What's so different about the iPhone that made it sort of a game changer?
I would say 2 things. One is it's the first real operating system, and I say that's a sort of it's a sounds like a technical concept, but it's the first operating system that really makes a lot of applications possible, and there's a whole bunch of technical details for that. But it's
operating system within a phone.
It's actually Unix. It's actually the same operating system that runs banks and airlines.
Right.
It's shrunk down to running the phone, and that's part of the brilliance of what Apple did. Is it's a real operating system, and then also they packaged the whole thing together, including the toolkits to build the applications, and then the way to actually distribute the applications onto the phone. And that had never been done before. So you could have bought a Microsoft phone or a RIM phone or whatever, and they never had it quite put together right, so somebody could build an application, distribute it, sell it, and get it down to the user.
In fact, you have said that iPhones are the demarcation point between operating systems. And the other problem we had is that there were so many different standards in America, unlike Europe, and so they got and Japan. They had a huge
They had a big advantage. So for building proprietary systems, they had a big advantage because there was a single network, basically a single kind of network. Now in the U.S., the networks have also consolidated down, so there's a much smaller number of networks. But now the iPhone is a point, sort of a central point, where as a developer you can rely on the iPhone being a stable platform for development, and so a lot of developers are doing that. And then the other significant thing is, now that the iPhone is successful, it paves the way. Much like the Macintosh paved the way for Windows PCs, it paves the way for another set of companies, whether it's Microsoft or RIM or dozens of others or startups, to create new devices.
By the way, you are one of the people who really do, and I think this is enormous too, give credit to Bill Gates for developing an operating system that was a standard, and things happened because of that.
That's a big deal. That's a very big deal. That's a very serious commitment for a company. Apple's had this commitment. Microsoft's had this commitment. You have to commit. It's actually a commitment to what's called backward compatibility. So you have to commit to never break anything. So you load up Windows Vista, and you can still run the original VisiCalc from 30 years ago, which was the original killer app on the PC, original spreadsheet. And so that is a long-term institutional commitment that takes a very serious company to be able to do. And then the opportunities, I mean, Netscape was an application that got built on top of that kind of platform. The Macintosh is that, the iPhone is that, and it's sort of a responsibility for the next set of vendors to do that.
I just read it, I think, this week, where Microsoft has an operating system, a mobile operating system that they are now going to work with LG and a whole new phone. I mean, other people will be doing that.
Well, they're doing a
rethink. New operating system.
They're doing a rethink. They've had a mobile strategy for years, right? They've had Windows Mobile. They're doing a rethink of it because they've seen the iPhone.
I think if you look at the iPod, he did a couple of things. There were MP3 players galore before Apple got into business.
Yeah.
What he did is he came out with a great industrial design, very simple operating capability, and he also went to Hollywood, to the content folks, and married the great industrial design with a legal content download system. And he did everything right place at the right time. And that's one of Steve's exquisite characteristics, knowing timing and pulling that stuff together.
I think this is another example of something that's fundamental to understand about Steve Jobs as a CEO. He is not a market research-driven guy. He doesn't want to go out and ask people, well, how can we make this a little bit better, or what's the next little improvement you'd like? He tries to figure out what people don't know they want yet, and then try to do it in a beautiful way and try to make them want it. And I'm probably being the most reserved here tonight because although I do agree with David that the feeling is wonderful in the hand, I need to live with it, but I will say he's not shying away from big, bold risks, and that's been true of him whether you're talking about Apple or Pixar or whatever he's done. It's just the way he operates as a business guy. It also, means that there's a risk of a big flop in some of these products over time.
Part of his gift, I think, is recognizing an inflection point in time. When Microsoft came out with the panel, with the tablet computer, we were not bathed in wireless everywhere we went. There was not this deep, rich content around every corner. It was sort of hard to figure out, why would you end up using that? I think Steve Jobs has, a very good sense of when the right moment occurs, when there's going to be enough content, enough access, so that something that displays web content in an easy-to-surf way is going to be extreme value to a huge whole cohort of people, not just nerds.
Well, I think that those are both good comments. I would say one of the other things that has to be said is he's been willing to take big risks. sometimes when he does things, it's a little early. You know, put the CD-ROM drive in every Mac, and built-in sound. I mean, this sounds ridiculous, but if you're an older person, you remember that when PCs were sold, they didn't have sound cards in them, but Macs did, and they had CDs. But he also took out the floppy drive about a year and a half before anyone else did, and so sometimes he can be a little early. And for all of his talent and risk-taking that we've discussed, I think we need to be careful that we don't know if this is going to be a big hit yet, the iPad that we've been discussing.
Well, Steve Jobs is very simply a genius. He has many different things. Of course, he has talent. Of course, he has vision, and he has guts. You know, guts is one of the most important things, because you know what? Sometimes ideas to some people like him might be $1 a pound. It's which ones you decide to carry on against which odds that really define you. And guts I admire a lot.
Steve Jobs is a brilliant man, and his brilliance is not in the movie business. His brilliance...
It's not even in technology per se, and his brilliance is marketing and understanding of business.
Exactly right. That's what his brilliance is, particularly in marketing. I mean, again, they sell 100 iPods a minute. I mean, you know, so we were all brought up to think it takes years and years to create brands, and he's taught us it's not true at all. You can make an immediate impact. The idea that Pixar is as well known or better known for family entertainment now than Disney is astonishing. A, because they've only made 6 movies, and B, because they were distributed by Disney. So they always had Disney's name next to it. And yet, if you do a brand marketing study, Pixar's the one. Steve Jobs and Bill Gates are kind of the main, the best-known fathers of this whole thing, the whole PC revolution, which led to the internet, the digital revolution that we're in. They go back, they know each other about 30 years, they're about the same age, they're about 50 now, and these are both people who had their fame begin when they were in their 20s. You know, they had their picture on the cover of Time magazine when they were in their 20s. And the relationship between them, they've always had a rivalry, and it has shifted, Charlie. It's interesting. At the beginning, Jobs was preeminent. He was hiring Microsoft to do some software for the Macintosh and so forth, and Jobs was the more minor figure. And then, of course, Jobs outfoxed them in business terms, and you know, Bill Gates is the richest guy in the world, the biggest philanthropist in the world.
So first it was Jobs, then Gates came more casting.
Now
Jobs has come up.
Jobs has had a terrific few years, and it's not that Bill Gates is not wealthy and powerful and influential in his company and his software still, but the hotter one in the last few years, in a way, has been Steve Jobs, who has taken Apple back, company he founded and was driven out of. He's revived it. He's revived the Macintosh, built a new operating system, and of course, he's done the iPod, which has just been revolutionary.
Steve Jobs, what's the genius that he has been able to...
Yeah, I think it's on multiple dimensions. I think there's a clear understanding of what he's done for design, for product quality, for innovation. I think what's unique about Steve Jobs is he also was an extraordinary business thinker.